Okay, I've been meaning to show this, but I know going to a bigger bucket, this bucket was originally intended to move sawdust with from the sawmill, but it found out it doubles as firewood. But as you can see, I've run into a problem when you use, well, this is definitely a smaller than average tractor, and this is reasonably flat ground here on the road, so the relationship of the tractor to the truck is pretty much spot on. And you know top of my head is at about that pin, so that pin is at about 6 feet in the air. So you can imagine, if I pull this thing out here, the original bucket would have only been, that's about 2 feet from the pin. That would have only been to about here. So at that point, you could dump over the side of the truck, no problem. But with this bucket being essentially, well, since I'm holding a tape measure here, that's pretty much spot on 38 inches from end to end. And in case I didn't get it in the previous, but that's just pockets that the forks stick into. So basically the only way that I can put wood into the back of the truck is to push it in through the tailgate. I cannot dump over the side. So if you're, if you got sideboards on the truck, see if I stretch this tape measure out here. That would be, I think I built them about there, because I think overall from the bed of the truck up to the top of the racks I made is just about 3 feet, 36 inches. And so, that's clean clear up there. So for that to dump over the top of it is impossible. I mean, you can go over the side of it and kind of kick it in, but you're always in danger of absolutely bashing your pickup bed. So I guess that's an aspect of, getting rid of the pickup bed and going to a flat bed and having removable sides. Then you'd be able to put the wood on for more than just the back end, because I have to dump in the bucket and push it forward and dump in a bucket and push it forward. And I can't necessarily get it on top of the previous bucket. I have to dump it behind it, go as far back on the tailgate as I can, and then push the thing forward. So anyway, yeah, that's a backing plate from it would have been, we bought it brand new. We didn't buy it from a used forklift, but it is, I would call that 54 inches. And it's pretty heavy. I could probably cut it back from there, cut it back to there on both sides, because from there to there is 30, over 37 inches. If I can get the tape measure to cooperate. Of course, then it depends on whether, you're going from the side of the flat steel or the side of the loader. But the original buckets that came with these, with the loader, is the optional bucket that my grandpa got is a full 4 feet wide, and then the standard bucket that the vast majority of these early 1980s tractors have from Kubota is they're just barely the width of the loader. And the bucket, the alternative bucket my grandpa got with the tractor, sticks out in here instead of, because if that was 30, 37, that's 48 out there. If I can get the tape measure to cooperate, yeah, that would be about right. Just put about 4 or 5 inches on each side, and that would get you a 4 foot wide bucket from the factory. So, yeah, the tractor itself came from Japan and was manufactured in Japan. The little fuel valve here, if that's even legible, maybe you can see that, is I guess that's Japanese. And why the valve is vertical in the open position, and when it's with the fuel line, the fuel is closed off, that monkeys with a whole lot of people's heads, because you wouldn't think it's that way, and obviously I have no way of reading those little symbols on there. And the tractor was, as I was saying, was made in Japan, but the backhoe and the loader was made in America. So when you go to work on this thing, you have to have a full set of SAE tools and a full set of metric tools, because you literally have half and half. You got to have SAE tools when you go to do the clutch. You got to have SAE tools to dismount the backhoe and dismount the loader. And then you got to have metric tools to split the tractor in half to do the clutch, which is a fun thing to do. So anyway, I guess the other thing I can show is this is for the big yellow John Deere, Angry Johnny as we call it, because it's got that 253 in it. And it has the same, well, they're kind of mud filled, because I had to drag it over here when the track broke and get this off from the machine. So I couldn't set it down there with the machine. I had to drag it over here with the skidder. And, you know, it's significantly larger than, yeah, that's basically 4 feet. Because when I made the previous video, I was unable to measure it. By 4 feet. It's that time of year the bugs are coming out. By 6 feet. And I guess the other thing I couldn't show in the other video, because the bucket was in its normal upside down position when it normally comes off the crawler loader when it's running. This side is to the ground, so this thing won't fill up with rainwater. This is only this way because the track broke and I had to get this bucket off from the machine, so then I basically had to run a chain and cables to the, I can't remember if it was to the loader or the front. I think it was the front of the machine. There was a hook point on the front of the machine, and I was able to pull it that way. But this one scoop mounted up massively high fills an 8-foot pickup bed to the absolute max with no sideboards. If you got sideboards, then you need a little bit more than one scoop. But it is absolutely amazing how heavy wet sawdust is. You wouldn't think, but sawdust that has been rained on all winter is incredibly heavy. That one bucket full, I mean, there's, well, I got a little bit of weight in the truck right now with a couple of scoops of wood, but you know, you can see that gap there to the overloads. And it sets it right down on it with one scoop of sawdust in there. It is some seriously heavy stuff. I've been amazed. I've taken a few loads over scales and whatnot, and I thought, well, there's 2,500 pounds or something in sawdust. Well, you got to remember the rainwater, and it is a lot of weight. So I guess that's one of the other unique things about this early 80s tractor is you have the hydraulic pump for the loader. I don't know if I can show it here. Maybe I can. Oh, it's back there behind the guards and the shields. It's pretty much invisible. But you can basically see this line and that line, and they go back alongside here to my cup full of rainwater, and they go in here to the side of the transmission. So that hydraulic pump that's mounted onto the basically the back side of the injection pump doesn't actually use hydraulic oil. It's actually using the gear oil in the transmission, and that is what on these gear models is the up and down for the PTO 3-point hitch, because normally right here these shafts that we got taped over, because this tractor has more or less lived 99% of its life with a frame mounted backhoe. You can see it's got these brackets, and then there's the beams, these steel pieces that run up here to the front. And that allows me to put the feet down. And because if it's a backhoe that's mounted to the 3-point hitch and you go to put your feet down, you've always got to worry about bending up the 3-point hitch, because you're putting stress to the 3-point hitch in the opposite direction of what it's intended for. So I guess the other thing I was saying is then you got a third hydraulic pump back here, which is off in the PTO, that is dedicated to the backhoe. It has its own, and that is a normal hydraulic system. So you have 2 independent hydraulic systems for the loader and the backhoe, and then you have the hydraulic system that's permanent to the tractor for the 3-point lifting mechanism. Obviously, if it's installed, to put this backhoe on, you basically remove the entire 3-point hitch assembly. There's a shaft. Yeah, there's this hole here, and there's a shaft that runs from side to side. You have to take a tire off to put that shaft in or take it out. So counterbalance of the backhoe, and then the liquid filled tires to balance out for the loader. The previous loader backing piece was significantly lighter duty, and we estimated when it had that on there, this little tiny tractor could pick up about 900 pounds. With it rebuilt with this heavier mass, it's more like a 700-pound lifting capacity. Not with the bucket. You lose lifting capacity when the bucket is on. But still, for a tractor that has literally an engine that is identical in size to what is the 3-cylinder engine in a Geo Metro, 700 pounds of lifting capacity is rather impressive. I believe if the sticker's still, yeah, if I can read that, 219, B219. So that would be, for whatever reason, you know, the loader's made in America, but they still rate the lifting capacity of the thing in metric tons. So a metric ton is basically 2,200 pounds and change. So just call it 2,200 pounds. So 0.219 of a metric ton. So that would be what? 400 and something pounds ish. That's close enough. 400 and something pounds is what it is, should be able to lift, or what it was certified to lift from the manufacturer. So it's definitely lifting far more than, yeah, this is not the original valve, and this loader frame is not the original loader frame. It's off from another tractor that we picked up for parts, because 40-year-old tractor, it starts getting a little bit harder to find parts. The original loader frame, it cracked here one time on both sides, and then the first side that was welded, it re-cracked. The first loader frame, this piece across here, we fish plated with flat bar and did a whole bunch of extra welding. And then, where did it crack? The last time it cracked somewhere, I figure the tube, for whatever reason, was getting filled up with rainwater, and because it was getting rainwater in there somehow. I don't know how, but it did somehow. Or it's just that, or, you know, it lifting far more than what it was what it's supposed to be able to lift. And then, you know, right now it's just a standard bucket, but you also have to visualize that other than moving sawdust and firewood, this thing moves logs and lumber. And you get a log on this that is up around the maximum 700 pounds, that is not an incredibly big diameter, but is, you know, 14, 16 feet long, 12, or even just 12 feet long, you can start to see this loader literally flex back and forth an inch or two or more. And I even see it, for the big stuff, I'm using that one. And, the mill can take up to a 26-foot long log. That's, that's why you see these, that one there on the top, that's pushing 2 foot on the small end, and it's 10, 12, somewhere around 14 feet long. I don't think it's a 16. It might be 14 feet plus trim. That loader, it's starting to rock back and forth with just a 14, 16-foot log. You get a 26-footer on there, and, the far ends of that log, they're going up and down. Metal will bend. If you put enough force to it, it will bend. And luckily, we've never had an issue with that loader, because obviously it's built significantly heavier than this thing is. This thing's probably intended to live in somebody's backyard and just dwaddle around and do little odd projects and whatnot. So anyway, yeah, that's the other, this is B7100. And basically the only difference between the 7100 and the 6100 is a small adjustment in the max fuel on the injection pump, because the 6100 is 14 horse and the 7100 is 16 horse. And that's the only difference as far as I know. These are probably one of the last tractors, or even the last pieces of equipment. You would think that that's the water pump there, but that is actually what generates the power on the tractor. You get into the early 80s, early 80s, there's no water pump on this thing. It literally cools itself with natural convection, like John Deere tractors from the 40s and 30s, where they literally didn't use a water pump. They just used natural convection through the radiator, with the fan pulling air through the radiator for cooling. What other interesting tidbits? So yeah, I guess the original loader frame, it over the years, it cracked a total of 5 times, and it was patched back together 4 of the 5 times. The 5th time we came up with this. We came up with a B6000. That's one of the tractors that has the air cleaner and the exhaust are on opposite sides of the tractor, because the engine literally rotates the wrong direction of the standard direction. And that tractor we got for parts, it literally has a I don't know if it's a dealer installed device or an aftermarket, and it's a device on the back end of the PTO, and it literally, it's a combination of gears, and it reverses the direction of the PTO so that you can run a standard PTO driven implement on the back of it. Because what good is a brush hog or a tiller that spins the wrong direction? It's not going to do you a whole lot of good. So anyway, I thought I'd just give a little. These things are getting harder and harder to find as time goes on. Probably, other than the loader cracking, the thing we've had the most trouble with is that steering box. If anybody has one of these tractors, you need to make sure that that box stays full of oil. Because if you go to a dealership because that steering box blows out, you're literally going to be spending an amount of money that is on par with the value of the tractor. I mean, by the time they quoted buying the parts and getting them shipped in and putting it together, I think it was approaching $2,000, somewhere around $2,000 or close to $2,000 to rebuild that steering box. So be aware of that and make sure it stays full of gear oil, because well, the other thing I've come across a few times is there's spots up here on the steering for the these bolts, and some people like to take those bolts out so that you get a little bit more steering angle. Well, if you take those bolts out, those bolts are the safety to keep the steering box from bottoming out and damaging itself. So that's another word to the wise. Keep those silly little bolts in there, or that can be other than running out of oil, it's another way you can take out that steering box. And well, yeah, the other slightly interesting thing, as you can see, well, kind of 1, 2, 3. So the gear models on these are a 3-speed PTO, and the prehistoric hydrostatic versions of these tractors are a 2-speed PTO. Hydrostatics have this great big thing up here, so you can't hardly, you got to swing your foot way up over the top of it, because it's got this gigantic thing there to the added space that the hydrostatic system takes up. And I have seen one of these gear model tractors that is equipped with a creeper gear set. So it basically has another 3 gears below what this tractor has for low. And that was basically to run a trencher. So you could use the tractor to run a trencher, or and maybe till up a garden. I don't know what else you would want a to make a tractor to go so bloomin' slow that you can go take lunch and come back and the tractor hasn't even gone 20 feet. So just a little history lesson. And yes, the 2 rear rims are different colors because calcium does destroy rims. If you're looking at getting a tractor and keeping it long term, and they're telling you at the tire store, calcium eats rims and beet juice doesn't eat rims. Well, they're right, but it took 30 years before we had to replace the rims. So it takes a while for that damage to happen. And there's, these rims on this little tractor are they're thin. They're not that thick. The rims on the skidder are significantly thicker, and it always has liquid-filled tires on the back end. Generally speaking, it doesn't have liquid in the front tires, just the back tires. Right now, because I had a flat tire a while back, the starboard side, I say that because I'm backwards to the machine here, is liquid filled right now, because I had a punctured tire and I had to get another tire on it so that I could keep using it for the time being. So, but I can use, when I take those things apart, I can grind and clean and scrape, and there's still material left, whereas with these rims, you go to take a needler and a grinder to it to clean all the rust up, you're in danger of being all the way through the rim by the time you get all the rust cleaned up. So we just replaced the two rims on the back end. So I don't know what else to talk about. Oh shoot, this is gonna take 40 hours to upload, over a half an hour. You can, yeah. Anyway, if you've been listening to this long enough for me to jibber jabber about a 40-year-old tractor, I thank you for watching. Until next time, have fun.